Let's get started. Welcome everyone to ForeFlight Logbook. This is the last in a series of webinars that we've been doing throughout the month of August, using presentations given at EAA AirVenture in Oshkosh last month. Whether you've been using ForeFlight Logbook for years, or if you're just getting started, we've got a lot for you today. But before I hand it over to our presenters, I want to mention you can ask questions during today's webinar by using the GoToWebinar message panel on the right side of your screen. We'll respond to as many questions as we can during today's presentation, and we'll take a few of the more popular ones and answer them live at the end. I will say if you have a question, submit it as soon as you think of it. As we get farther along in webinars, the number of questions we get tends to go up, which makes it harder to respond to everyone. If you encounter any audio or other technical problems during today's webinar, first try leaving and rejoining the webinar. And also if you're using a mobile device, we find that GoToWebinar tends to work a lot better if you're using a computer if you have one available. Lastly, this session is being recorded and it will be accessible at foreflight.com/webinars by this time tomorrow. With that, Rachel and Kendall, over to you.
Hi, my name is Rachel Scarborough. I am a product manager here at ForeFlight. I am a commercial pilot as well as a certified flight instructor, and I do instruction on the side. I just recently got my airplane single engine C rating, which I'm extremely excited about, and might throw a couple of features in here about seaplanes. But I'm going to hand this off to Kendall.
Hey guys, my name is Kendall Stovall. I work on the pilot support team here at ForeFlight. I've been in general aviation for about 10 years, about half that time being a flight instructor, and I've been with ForeFlight for about 2 years.
For today's goals, we're going to be going over a list of various features here, including setting up your logbook, adding different qualifications, including certificates and ratings, how to set up a logbook aircraft, create a logbook entry, create a simulated flight entry. We're going to go over some of the currency summaries, as well as logbook reports, and also how to import and export into ForeFlight and out of ForeFlight. Today, we're also going to be having a persona of an instrument-rated pilot. So we're going to demonstrate not only many of the features that a VFR pilot would use, but we'll also go a little further in depth and give a broader understanding of ForeFlight Logbook's capabilities. And before we get into this webinar here, we have a great resource online or inside the app that is available. It's called the ForeFlight Logbook Guide. You can go straight to the Documents page and then under Drives, tap on ForeFlight, and it will be one of the first options there, Logbook Guide. So to start us off with settings within Logbook, I'm going to hand this over to Kendall.
Awesome. So settings within Logbook. To find the settings within Logbook, first we're going to start out within the ForeFlight mobile app. For most people, Logbook isn't going to be right there at the bottom of the tabs. So what we're going to do is tap More on the right-hand side. And then from the list of views on the top right, we'll select Logbook. So there is a scrollable side menu. And at the bottom, under Menu, we can tap Settings. Within the settings themselves, we're going to talk a little bit about configuring fields. So like a traditional paper logbook, all of the fields in ForeFlight Logbook can be turned on or turned off. As you can see on my current fields, I don't have things like HOBS or TAC turned on or something like night vision goggles. These are all by preference. So this means that whenever you start a new entry or you want to edit times or anything like that, those can be turned on or off depending on what you're looking for in your logbook. At the very bottom of configuring fields, we have custom fields. So custom fields are for anything that is not a traditional logbook field. For instance, Rachel and I went up to Alaska recently and we did some single engine C work. And while we were up there, obviously we got a couple of takeoffs and landings. So I'm going to make a quick configured field for single engine C landings. And I will make that a counter. So all that means is when this field appears inside of an entry, it will be a counter like adding 1, 2, 3, or 4, depending on the number of landings that we did. So then I've tapped out single engine C landings and selected counter from the field type. I'll hit done. Down here under custom fields, you can see the single engine C landings. And that will be presented on a logbook entry when we make that later.
Next, we're going to talk about adding qualifications. So let's go to the Qualifications tab on the left-hand side of your logbook page. In the upper right-hand corner, you're going to tap on that plus sign. And we're going to start out with just adding a certificate. So we'll tap on that. First thing I'd like to do is add my medical. And I'm going to go ahead and enter in my class here, along with the date issued, and give it an expiration date. And this is going to be very important to get this set up because later on we'll talk about currency summaries, and whatever you enter here is going to relate automatically to that currency summary. So we'll tap on done, and next we'll add in a pilot certificate. So let's tap on the plus button in the upper right hand corner again. Tap on certificate one more time. And we're going to select the private pilot. And since we're an instrument rated pilot, we'll go ahead and add rating there and choose the top option for instrument airplane. Once we've filled in all that information, we'll tap on the done button there. And let's go ahead and enter an endorsement. So we'll tap on endorsement. We've got the lookup option here. We have over 60 common endorsement types that are derived from AC 61-65, and this is the easiest way to look up an endorsement, make a selection, and have it autofill the generic descriptions in there for you. So we're going to go ahead and tap on lookup and use the search bar at the top of the page. I'm just going to enter in instrument to narrow down my search here, and tap on the instrument proficiency check. So now you see here that our endorsement has been autofilled in the description box, and we can just modify it to include any kind of relevant information and give specific details about the student. Now, if you tap on Add Instructor Signature, this can give the instructor the ability to sign it directly in your app. They also have the option to send you an endorsement, but this way you've got it all set up for them and they can just modify it to their needs as well. And now you can see under endorsements, we've got our certificate set up, our endorsement is there under completion of an instrument proficiency check. And anytime you get an endorsement, you're going to come back to qualifications and see all your records here.
Okay, next we're going to talk about setting up logbook aircraft. So while we're still setting up our logbook, we want to know where we can find that. So making sure all of our current aircraft are in ForeFlight Logbook, we'll scroll back down to that scrollable menu, and then we'll hit aircraft. So once we've tapped aircraft, we want to make sure of one thing. Whenever you're setting up an aircraft in Logbook, we want to make sure that we are actually in the Logbook page and not the aircraft page. Unfortunately, these two pages do not talk to each other. So if you do set up an aircraft on the aircraft page and not on the logbook aircraft page under that menu right there on our screen, we won't be able to connect that to any other logbook entries. So once we get to this aircraft page, we'll tap that plus button up on the top right-hand corner. And once that is selected, we can fill out the basic information. So we'll start with the aircraft ID and we'll fill out our tail number. And then once complete, we will go ahead and tap that type code, and you can see a little button there that says look up. So up here at the very top, we're going to start by typing in our Piper aircraft, and you can see this whole selectable list that we have throughout here. So in this selectable list, we're going to go find our Cherokee. and that is under Piper Aircraft down there at the bottom. As you can see, we have a number of different Cherokees in the selectable list, and we're just going to do the best we can to select the aircraft that we are currently flying in. As you can see throughout this whole profile, it does automatically fill out a lot of information for us. The only thing that is missing is that gear type, so we're going to click on gear type, and then we are going to select the fixed tricycle gear, which will appear there in gear type. Whenever we're setting up any sort of aircraft, we want to make sure that all of the fields are not highlighted in orange like gear type was when we were going through that video, just to make sure that our logbook aircraft is complete, because if we don't have a complete logbook aircraft, it may affect our hours and our reports later. Next thing we're going to set up is a simulator. So whenever we set up a simulator, we're still going to go back to that menu and then tap aircraft. And just like before, we'll tap that plus sign up there in the top right-hand corner. The only thing that'll change from automatically going into the aircraft ID is the equipment type. So we do want to change the equipment type to whatever simulator best coordinates with what we're going to be in. So we do have a full list right there. Once we've selected the type of equipment, we'll go ahead and name the simulator. This could be as simple as a N number as in 123, or the touch simulator like we have up there. Next, we'll go ahead and hit the represented type aircraft. This will be similar to how we set up our last aircraft by tapping the lookup. For this one, we decided to go with a 172. And then we also had that autofill out for it being a single engine land aircraft. Once complete, you will see in our list of logbook aircraft the touch trainer under all aircraft.
So to give you a little bit of context of what we're going to set up here for our logbook entry, I'm going to go to the maps page and show you my route. So in this scenario, Kendall and I went on a trip from Austin to Lake Ozark, Missouri. One of our actual goals is to fly in the women's air race, and we decided that we needed to learn how to work as a team. We've really only been on one flight together, so we need to do a lot more flights to prepare. So from Austin Bergstrom, our first stop is going to be Greenville, Texas, and we're going to stop there and fuel up the plane. And then we realized on our way from Greenville that, you know what, it is extremely hot in this plane and we did not bring any water. We're coming from Texas. As you guys know, summers in Texas, especially this one right now, it's been over 100 degrees for a very long time. So we did not do our part in our pre-flight and grab some water in this scenario. So we're going to go ahead and stop in Sallisaw, Oklahoma. And our final destination is going to be Lake Ozark, Missouri. So going back to the logbook page here, we're going to tap on the plus button over on the left-hand side. From there, tap on New Entry, and we'll just start filling out the general details here. So we'll start with our flight date, tap on Aircraft and make the appropriate selection, and earlier we set up the November 98765 aircraft, so we'll tap on that. And let's go ahead and enter in our departure airport, which was Austin Bergstrom, as well as our destination and our route. Now, it's important here to note that in the route section, when you have multiple airports, you just want to enter in each airport with a space in between them. So you don't need to add any extra characters or punctuations there. Scrolling on down, under the time selection, we'll go ahead and enter in our total time. And for this particular flight, it was 5 hours. And once we entered our total time, you can see these use buttons populate. And that just gives you an option to do a quick tap on those to enter in the same amount of total time that you had. So you could do that or just enter in a manual time. But for PIC, I'm going to enter that 5.0, same with the cross country there. And we'll use the distance that it is automatically giving us as well. Under takeoffs and landings, we're just going to fill in what we made for this flight, and we did do 3 takeoffs and landings. And since this was an instrument flight, we did an hour of actual instrument, so I've entered that in along with 1 hold. And then we're going to tap on Add Approach to add our RNAV in here. The airport is going to populate for me automatically, and I'm going to tap on Approach and select from the approaches there. We did an RNAV runway 4. We'll tap the back button, and that approach is filled in for us. But actually, I forgot that we ended up doing 2 approaches, and the second one was a VOR. So if I want to add on any more approaches to this, we'll just tap on that Add Approach button again, select our VOR, and then go back. Let's say that I made a mistake. We didn't do an RNAV and a VOR. It's actually 2 RNAV approaches. So one thing we can do to quickly remove that VOR approach is swipe left, tap on the Delete button, and to duplicate the RNAV approach, we're going to swipe left again on that RNAV and tap on Copy. So we've got our approaches in here, and we'll keep scrolling down. This wasn't a training flight, so I'm not going to enter anything into those fields. But if it was, I could also add an instructor signature. Next is the flight tag section. If you had a flight review, an IPC, a check ride, etc., you can enter that in here. Make sure that you tag or select the appropriate tag. That is also going to affect your currencies, let's say for your flight reviews. So we want to make sure that we have the appropriate tag. Under crew and passengers, I will add Kendall as my passenger here. So we'll tap on Add Person. And apparently in this test account, I am a bad friend because I do not have Kendall added into my contact list. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on the plus button there. We'll add her as a new person, fill in the details here, make our default role for her as passenger, but I can always change that later down the road. We'll go ahead and close this out, and you can see that she has now been added to this flight. Kendall showed you how to make a custom field earlier, and this is where the custom field populates in the logbook entry. So if this was a single engine seaplane landing, I can add that here, but since it wasn't, we're just going to skip over this. You can also include flight photos for each of your logbook entries. So I'm going to go ahead and add one here by tapping on either camera or photo library and access that. And this was an actual picture of me and Kendall in a fighter jet here. I wish that was the plane that we actually flew, but it was still fun nonetheless. And then under comments, I just mentioned that this was a fun flight with Kendall.
So the next thing that we're going to take a look at is simulated flight entries. So for this sort of entry, we want to go ahead and start this by changing the aircraft to our touch trainer that we made earlier. Once complete, we will go ahead and add our from in 2 airports. We'll go with Austin and Georgetown. Once both of these airports are entered, we'll go ahead and add a route field because that was what we simulated for this particular simulated flight. We'll go ahead and do that as Taylor and hit done. So we're not going to do any of our start or end times, so we'll go ahead and scroll past that. And neither are we going to do total times because this was a simulated flight, same with landings. And we will go down to our simulated instrument because we did do a couple of approaches. So we'll enter that as 1. and then we'll start to add those approaches in. So tapping on Add Approach, we'll check the airport, and we did these at Georgetown, so that's correct. We'll scroll through and select the RNAV for runway 29, and we did a circle to land. Go ahead and tap back, and then add that second approach. Once again, we can change the airport. This one we happen to do at Taylor. We'll select it for the generated list, and then the VOR for runway 17. We'll tap back to go with that entry again. And then as we scroll down a little bit further, we will go through to add the simulated flight. So this is how we keep track of the simulated hours in the experience report and to make sure it doesn't get muddled with our actual time in aircraft. Now that we have that entry complete, we are good to go.
We have some other options to create entries that aren't using a blank entry. And this is by using the send to function. So I'll start here by showing you how to send your route from the maps page to Logbook. So starting on the maps page, we have our FPL or Flight Plan Editor open. And you can see that square with the upward arrow is our Send To button. So we're going to tap on that and then select Logbook. And all of the general fields there came from the maps page, so that was auto-generated for us. We can scroll down and see that it entered in a total time of 4.1. This was not including any stops, so we can go in and make any necessary changes here manually. It also entered in a takeoff and landing for us, as well as that approach for the RNAV runway 4, since we had that on the maps page through the procedure advisor as well. The second send to function that we have is through the flights page. So make your way over to the flights page here. And once you have selected your flight plan, at the very top right-hand corner, tap on that send to button again. And then tap on Logbook. And then the third send to option is from the track logs. So to get to track logs, tap on the More button in the bottom right-hand corner, and then under Views, tap on Track Logs. Again, in that upper right-hand corner, you've got the Send To button, so we'll select that. We'll tap on Logbook, and now I want to point out here that you can see the actual track of your flight, so it's not a straight line from airport to airport anymore. And then scrolling down a little bit further, the track log keeps track of your time, so your time out, off, on, and in, and those were automatically populated as well for you. Next up, we're going to show you another shortcut through draft entry creation, and this is probably one of my favorite features in Logbook because it really makes things a lot easier. So starting on the Logbook settings there on the left-hand side, we will tap on Draft Entry Creation. And at the top there, you've got two different options. You can create a draft from a filed flight plan, or you can create one from a track log. We're going to focus on the track log here. You could enable both or one or the other. But for now, we've got the track log enabled. And then we need one more thing to set this up before I show you how a draft entry is created. So we're going to go to the More menu, and at the top right-hand corner, tap on Settings. And in the search bar there, since we've got a bunch of different options and settings, we're going to make our lives easier and just tap in or type in track log, I should say, and you'll notice the track log section there. The first option is enable start-stop control, This is going to give you that REC or record button on the maps page here. And basically it allows you to start or stop your track log recording. And going back to settings here, the second option is to enable the auto start and stop function. When acceleration is detected and your ground speed exceeds 60 knots, ForeFlight is automatically going to start a track log for you. It will give you a little bit of a buffer for taxi and run-up time, so it's going to add about 30 minutes prior to your takeoff that it detects, and about 15 minutes after you've landed for taxiing. Then going back to the logbook page here, we've got everything all set up and we made our flight. So your draft from track log is going to populate in the upper left-hand corner at the very top of the logbook page here under drafts and requests. So I'm just going to go ahead and tap on that. And you can actually access a full screen view of your track log by tapping on the track log within this logbook entry here. So we'll tap on that and we'll just play through this flight. We can see different options in the graph here. Right now I've got altitude and speed selected, but I can tap on that layers button and change it. If you've got an ADS-B device, you can choose between pitch or bank. If you have a Sentry Plus device, we actually have a G-load meter as well. I like to keep it mostly on altitude and speed. And if I want to fast forward or go back and rewind, I can just use that scrubber at the bottom of the page there. So now going back to this draft entry here, all of these fields were populated for us, but we can just go down and make sure that everything is correct, make any necessary changes. And once we're done, we'll just tap on that approve button. Now the draft entry does not automatically get input into your logbook until you approve it. So you'll notice on the left-hand side under entries and the all column, our total time is 37.2 right now. But once we tap on approve, this gets added in and it updates to 39 total time.
Okay, so the next thing that we're going to take a look at is the currency summary. So our currency summaries are going to be on that left-hand column right there. Right here we can see we have general, night, IFR, and flight review. So a lot of our currency summaries have the countdown for what day it expires. This can be mapped through flight tags or even like with our medical that we'll set up here in a little bit through information that we have entered in our logbook. So one of the first ones we'll take a look at here is our general currency. So this is the 3 takeoffs and landings done in the past 90 calendar days. As you can see here in our test account that this only has 1 takeoff and landing in the past 90 days. It is affected by that entry right there you can see from Austin. And we have not had any other landings. Also there at the bottom, you can see that any other entries that are not currently affecting that. These entries can be, because this is a general single engine land aircraft, if we had landings that we recently did in a single engine C or a multi-engine land, these would not affect our general currency for single engine land. And then for IFR, we have 2 different options here that would affect our IFR currency. So this could include our 6 approaches and 1 hold in the past 6 calendar months, or we could have added the IPC flight tag to any one of our entries. The IPC flight tag can be added in under the entry and then under flight tags themselves. The last one we'll take a look at is our flight review. So the last flight review that we had was about a year ago. This is also affected by the flight tags, not the endorsement. Anytime you receive an endorsement for an IPC or a flight review, while this is obviously important to have legally, for us to affect the currency summary, we need to make sure that we add a flight tag of either the flight review or IPC in the actual entry itself. Next, we're going to look at adding a currency summary. We're going to add our medical. So once we've done that, we'll tap medical and then done. And because we added our medical earlier in this webinar, you can see here that we have 720 days left remaining on our medical before it expires. And that is reflected here down in menu under qualifications. You can see that our first class medical is here as well. Next, we'll add another currency summary. And we will do that as our general first, and then single engine C. We'll tap done, and then we can see that we have 82 days remaining on that because we did a lot of flying recently here in Alaska. And that is our current countdown for our single engine C.
Next up, we're going to take a look at logbook reports. Reports are a way for you to export your logbook entries, get an 8710 report, or just see how far along you are towards a new certificate or rating. So let's take a look at this condensed logbook report. This is going to give you a cleanly formatted PDF that packages all of your logbook entries, certificates, and endorsements into one. At the bottom here, you can see our two entries that we created. One where I was flying with Kindle, and then another one that Kindle showed was setting up the simulator entry. And here you can see the approaches as well as any comments. And if we had any instructor signatures on training flights, you would see the instructor signatures here too. Scrolling down, you'll get all of your endorsements. So here's the one that we set up earlier, as well as any certificates. And there's our medical along with our private pilot and our instrument rating. And if you want to export this logbook report, you can use that handy Send To function by tapping on the Send To button and just airdrop this, email it, or print it out. Next, we'll take a look at the experience report. So this is going to include information about your certificates, ratings, flight times, and different aircraft. It includes specifics such as PIC, nighttime, instrument, etc. And it's also going to show you any logged simulator time as well. At the very bottom of the experience report, if you have some custom fields that you created, those are going to show here on the experience report as well. And we also have different certificate progress reports. So right here, we're looking at the private pilot. We also have an instrument and commercial. And this one is going to show you how many hours or landings you've done for a specific requirement. And it gives you that nice green check mark once you've fully met the requirement as well. And now Kindle's going to show us how to import and export a CSV file.
To import and export CSV files, this can only be done on ForeFlight Web. To find this in particular, we can go to plan.foreflight.com. Once we have signed in, on the left-hand side there, you can see that we have highlighted that we've clicked on Logbook. And at first it pops up into entries, but we want to go over to the import process. So we tapped import on the top right. And as you can see here, this is where we would either drag and drop a file or also download the template to start entering our information so we can add our logbook information into foreflight.com. While we're trying to format our CSV file for import, we may need some help for that formatting. So right there under the download ForeFlight template, we have the need help and read formatting notes. So if we click on that drop down, it will go through any of our knowledge base articles that can help us with more information, as well as some tips right there as well on the import page itself. Next, if we need to export that CSV file or logbook information in general at any point in time, right next to import, we have export. And then on this page, you have that export option button. Once clicked, it will download a CSV file onto your browser itself into your downloads folder, so that can be opened later in the application of your choosing. Next, we're going to take a look at some catch-up entries. So while some people may have more hours than others, or in general, uploading all of your hours individually on a CSV file may seem daunting, you can also do a catch-up entry. So there are 3 types of catch-up entries. There is total time only. So this is entering the total times in an individual entry by field. So think total time, PIC, instrument, etc. We have time by type, so anything that is make and model, you can visualize that as all the time that you have in a 172 or an Archer or 182. You also have a time by aircraft ID. So this is specifically looking at if you had a lot of time in number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You want to make sure that you specifically had the most information for that aircraft ID. The 2 places that I would look for the best sources of these articles that go more in depth is on our ForeFlight blog. We do have a catch-up entry blog entry, or on our support articles that's spelled out right there at the bottom of this page. So going more in depth for our time by type entry, back in the logbook section of ForeFlight Mobile, we'll go down to that menu and aircraft, and then we're going to add an aircraft as if we're going to make a catch-up entry. So tapping that plus sign in the top right, we'll start with an aircraft ID. Once we have that, this is all going to be for any of our 182 time. We'll hit look up because we want to make sure that we get all the information we can. We'll hit 182 and then scroll through to select the best 182 for this catch-up entry. Now that that's selected, we'll ensure that any of the gear type, missing information, or something like high performance is selected. And now that is complete, we'll go and we will make an logbook entry for this catch-up entry. So tapping that plus sign right next to logbook at the top, we'll select new entry. And then we will start with a flight date. So this varies by person. It can either be the current date, or it can be the date that you first started flying this aircraft or the last time. We'll do the current date for now. We'll go to aircraft and select that 182 that we had entered earlier. Once selected, you can put all the information for the total time in that. I have 50 hours in a 182. I'll go through and enter all the nighttime that I have in a 182, solo time, etc. As we scroll through the rest of the entry, this also is cross country, any of the night takeoffs and landings. And we'll continue to scroll through and add all of that information. Once complete, you can see on my experience report that all of my high performance hours have been updated, as well as the experience aircraft type. You can see my 182. I do have a single flight, and that is my catch-up entry, with the total times and everything else reflected correctly as my catch-up entry was entered.
All right, we've gone through a lot of logbook features. Now let's take a look at some of the new features that we've recently added. On the web, you have the option to take a look at the Part 141 report. So we've added a private pilot, instrument, and commercial for Part 141. This is not yet available in mobile, but is coming soon. And another thing that we have added onto the web is the complete logbook report. And inside the condensed and complete logbook report, we have cleaned this up a bit. Any columns that have 0 total time is now just going to be a blank column. And we've also entered a ground training column to these reports as well. Another item that we've updated is the 8710 report. So we've added a breakdown of your class hours. And the last couple of things that I've mentioned are all on web right now, but will be coming soon to mobile. As you know, currencies are available in-app But we also have the option now to view them on the web. So just going to plan.foreflight.com, tapping on that logbook icon, and you'll see the currency summary tab at the top of the page. And last but certainly not least is multiple track logs added to a logbook entry in ForeFlight Mobile. So in your logbook entry, tap on Add/Change Track Logs, and you can make your selection there. Then tap on Done. Now we've got 2 track logs added. You can see 2 different legs on the map itself, as well as these extra pills added to the map that you can tap and it highlights a specific leg. You can tap on a track log and expand it into a full screen, just like usual. And you'll see these pills added to the map here as well, and you can just take a look at each flight individually. And before we get into the Q&A section of this webinar, Kendall's going to give us a few tips and tricks to make your logbook experience even better.
Yeah, so one of my first tips and tricks for logbook is for our logbook aircraft. If you have particular notes that you want to add for your logbook, for me, it's like if a push to talk is sticky on the instructor side, or if you wanted to remember all of my planes look the same in this particular fleet and they have the same type of avionics, but this particular one happens to be blue. In the logbook section of ForeFlight, we'll scroll back down to that menu. We will tap Aircraft, and then I'm going to select this one here at the very top for Foxtrot. You can, instead of adding an actual photo of the aircraft, you can take some notes in the Notes app of your device, and then you can enter information like I have on here. So it may be hard to see, but when I click on it, you can see that I added that the avionics are a G1000. This is the blue plane in particular because there is a red and blue of this one. And the push to talk is sticky, just so I can remind myself before I get into this aircraft with the student that that one has a little bit of trouble. The next thing we'll talk about is finding associated entries with certain people. So Rachel and I have taken a number of flights together, and to find all of the entries that are associated with Rachel, under that same menu directly under Aircraft on the left-hand side, I'm going to tap People, and then I'm going to go ahead and select from the recents Rachel S. As you can see, it is her basic information up here at the top, but one of the last selectable options are associated entries. You can see that she's associated with 6 different entries. So I will tap on that, and all the entries that she is associated with will pop up here. Once I have found all of these entries, if I need to edit them for whatever reason, I can also select the entry from that list right here. To exit this page, I'll tap back, Rachel S, and go back to all people if I wanted to find someone else. This can also be done with any of the aircraft that are connected with any entry. So going back into that aircraft menu, we'll go back to that For Foxtrot aircraft. You can see down here under the aircraft photos that they have associated entries with 13.7 hours in total. So once we click on that, all the entries will appear right here. They are also selectable from this list, so if they need to be edited for any reason, that can be done here as well. For our last tips and tricks, this is just more information on Logbook itself. One of the most important things that we did earlier was set up our Logbook aircraft. So anytime a Logbook aircraft is not set up, we do have that caution symbol, as you can see up here at the very top, is under November 797 Hotel Delta. Because an aircraft is not set up, when we go back to our menu and tap Reports, and then the Experience Report, you can see that we have under Experience Aircraft Type, an undefined aircraft. So to fix this, we'll go down to Menu, Aircraft. We will select that aircraft that has that caution symbol, Hotel Delta, and then we're, like before, going to tap Look Up and just complete the lookup on this aircraft. This is a 182, so we'll tap 182 and select the best available aircraft, which is that Skyline. Looks like a lot of that information filled out itself, so we'll make sure all that's complete and that it no longer has the caution symbol on the list of aircraft. Now that that's all complete on your setup, we'll go back to Menu, Reports, and then Experience Report. As you can see on our Experience Report now, we no longer have a undefined aircraft under aircraft type. We just have our Archer from earlier, a 172, and our 182 time.
And that completes our logbook presentation, and I think we're ready to hand this back over to Jay.
Thanks, guys. Before we get into some of the questions that you submitted today, I want to mention these links you see on the screen here. First, support.foreflight.com is a great place to go to learn anything about ForeFlight, whether it's the logbook or track logs or anything else that you see in the app that you want to learn more about. Next, I'd encourage you to check out the logbook guide. Just about everything that Rachel and Kendall have talked about today can be found in the logbook guide, and you can find it both online at foreflight.com/logbook-guide. You can also find it in the Documents tab right in ForeFlight. Just go to Documents and the ForeFlight folder, and it should be one of the first things that comes up. Next, you can register for more webinars and watch past ones at foreflight.com/webinars. And if you scroll down to the bottom of that page, that's where you can find all of the presentations that the ForeFlight team gave at EAA AirVenture in Oshkosh last month. And lastly, you can always reach out to the pilot support team at team@foreflight.com. With that, let's move on to some questions. And thank you all for submitting so many great questions today. We've had a lot of them come in. We have had a lot of more questions than usual today, and we're really excited about that. We thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to start with the first question, and I'll go ahead and take it. We've had a few people asking about recording track logs in ForeFlight and what that, how to set that up. So I'm going to switch to my iPad here. What we're talking about with the track log is, recording our position throughout the flight. You can do this manually if you see this little record button I have right here on the right side of my Maps tab. But to set that up, we're going to go to More and Settings. And in the filter, I'm going to search for track log. And so I see enable stop start control, but on this account I have auto start stop turned off. So if I enable this, when my iPad detects that we are moving, when we are about to fly, it will automatically start recording a track log. You can leave both of them on though if you want to make sure that it starts. You can remove the manual option if you want. That took it off the Maps tab if you didn't see it there. You can do it either way. Let's see. I will ask the next question to, let's go to Kendall. Can you show me how to set up a report for the last 60 days in Logbook?
Yeah, so to set up a report for the last 60 days, I'm already on my reports tab right here. So let's talk about we'll go to the experience report right here. So once the experience report generates right here, at the very, very top, you can see that there is an all button and then a little arrow with a drop down. So if I tap that little arrow with a drop down, you do have the preset ranges that range from all, last 12 months, 6 months, 90 days, and 30 days. If you wanted to just change the date range to the last 60 days, you could choose from the to and from up here for your specific range. Or you could just do the last 60 days like was suggested. Let's see. We'll go for May because I think the last person that we had in this test account only had for May. So once that generates, you would just have your report for those last 60 days that was meant for this logbook in particular.
Great, thanks, Kendall. Rachel, the next question is for you. Can you tell me why ground instruction only appears in logbook reports when pulled from ForeFlight on the web and not from iOS?
Sure. Ground training was actually a recent feature that we added to the web because we were listening to customer feedback and decided that this would be a very beneficial column to have. So the web does include it right now, but iOS is going to be coming here pretty soon.
Great. Rachel, the next question is also for you. Can you talk about how to log tailwheel time in Logbook?
Yeah, I can show you with this iPad here. So this is going to just be however you set up your aircraft, you've got to make sure you have the right landing gear. So going to your logbook tab and then the aircraft menu, let's just say we tap on this top aircraft here. We'll go down to gear type. And you've got different options between fixed tail wheel and retractable tail wheel. So you just need to make sure that you have the appropriate selection there. And then anything that you've added, you can always go back to your experience report and see your time by type here.
Great, thanks, Rachel. The next question I have is for Kendall. Can I make an aircraft technically advanced airplane within the aircraft setup, and will Logbook keep track of my TAA time?
Yeah, so we'll go back into that same section that Rachel was in just now. So that's under menu and then aircraft. And then once we have selected our aircraft, we'll take this fixed tricycle gear right here, this for hotel. And then any TAA, complex, high performance pressurized, as you can see right here at the bottom, are toggled features. So because we're looking for TAA, I think for this one, we'll toggle that on. And that will mean it looks like there is 5.2 hours associated with this. So those 5.2 hours in our experience report will now show up as 5.2 hours as TAA, which was added to right here under the characteristic here at the top.
Perfect. Someone else said that they added their IPC, but it doesn't show on their IFR currency.
Yeah, so a big thing with Logbook is to make sure while we do get endorsements, because legally we want to get any sort of endorsement for a flight review or an IPC or anything to that effect, any endorsement that you get sent is not what's going to affect your currency summary, which is right here at the top. What's actually going to affect and change your currency summary is going to be flight tags. So as a quick example, I'll just add a new entry real quick. And we'll pretend that I've added the to and from that's up here on the side. I'll scroll down. And as you can see here on the side also with my currency summary for IFR, it's 0. So this is a great example for it being an IPC. Down here, right below the instructor signature, I can tap on tags and hit IPC. And that will add the IPC flight review to this. Once I complete the entry itself, like adding the approaches that I did with my instructor and everything else, as well as the time, it will change and turn my IFR currency back to now.
Great. Thanks, Kendall. Rachel, the next question's for you. We had several people write in, and I'm kind of going to generalize what all of them said. Some are student pilots, some are working on their commercial, some are CFIs, and they want to take their personal ForeFlight account where they use the logbook already, and once they get a job, maybe let's say for a Part 91 or 135 operator, how can they move their logbook from their personal ForeFlight account to their work account?
Sure, I think we get this question often, and the best answer would be to keep the same account you have, but if you need to use your employer's email address, then you just change the email address on the account. So you're not changing accounts, you're keeping your logbook and all your data there, just the email address changes. And if you have any questions related to this, feel free to email us, team@foreflight.com, and we would be happy to help you.
Great. Yeah, that's super helpful. Rachel, the next question's for you as well. Someone says, I'm going to go in and make a custom field for complex time. They want to know if that custom field is going to show up on their old flights or if it will just show up on the new flights that they make after creating that custom field.
Great question. Any new custom fields are going to populate on all of your logbook entries. So in the iPad here, we can go ahead and just do one real quick. Under settings, we will go down to configure fields and add a custom field there. And we'll just put in test to make this really noticeable on what we're doing. And go back to our logbook entries and just pick a random entry here. And at the very bottom, if we scroll down now, you can see under custom fields, we have that test field entered there as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Kendall, question for you also related to fields. One person asked, is it possible to hide fields in the logbook?
Yeah, so to hide any of the fields here in the logbook, we're going to scroll down to settings. And then we're going to go to configure fields right here. And I actually have a couple of fields already hidden here in Logbook. But if you didn't use hob times and that was already turned on, if you didn't use on and off, you can actually toggle all of these off and they will disappear from any residual entry. So let's see, let's do dual given and we'll turn that off right now. We'll go and we'll add a new entry. And you can see that when we scroll down into training, we don't have dual given.
Great. Thank you so much. And everyone, I want to thank you all so much for coming to this webinar today. I want to mention these links one more time. You can find tons of support resources for Logbook and the rest of ForeFlight at support.foreflight.com. You can check out the Logbook guide, which is separate from the Pilot's guide. Both are great resources, but if you want to learn more about Logbook, I would start with the Logbook guide, foreflight.com/logbook-guide, or just go to the Documents tab in ForeFlight and the ForeFlight folder. It's right there. You can register for more webinars and watch past ones at foreflight.com/webinars. And as I mentioned earlier, if you missed anything today, or you just kind of want to take a couple minutes and pause it and kind of follow along at a slower pace, you can do that. With this video, it will be posted there in the next 24 hours. And as I mentioned earlier, we got a lot of questions today. I'm sorry we couldn't get to everybody. So if you didn't have your question answered today, or if you have additional questions later on, you can always email team@foreflight.com. With that, I want to thank you all so much for coming today, and we'll see you on the next webinar.